Discover the hidden heartwarming stories of hope and resilience from Auschwitz's incredible past, in the quaint town of Maplewood, where every face is familiar and every smile tells a story. Ruth lived with an unbreakable spirit. Every morning, she rose before dawn, preparing for her shifts at the local diner, where the aroma of fried eggs and fresh coffee mingled with the laughter and chatter of regulars. But beneath the smiles and steaming plates, she carried the heavy legacy of her parents, Holocaust survivors whose souls had been forged in the fires of Auschwitz. Their survival was a miracle, a testament to resilience, and yet, it came with an emotional price, a burden Ruth navigated daily as she raised her two children, especially her fiery 16-year-old son, Jake. Jake was a whirlwind of teenage rebellion, and each conversation felt like a storm brewing. With every outburst about money, status, and the life he felt was denied to him, Ruth's heart sank. "Mom, why can't we just have nice things?" he'd demand, the bitterness creeping into his voice. It was as if he didn't see the value in the pain and endurance woven into their family history. To him, wealth equated to worth, and he was growing more frustrated with the modesty that had defined Ruth's world. Her heart ached as she realized he was caught in a different kind of struggle, a desire to escape the shadows of their past and forge a new identity, seemingly disconnected from the values she cherished. With the annual Harvest Festival just days away, Ruth felt the pull of her family's story more than ever. The Unsung Heroes competition offered a fleeting chance to share her parents' journey of resilience and love, wrapped in the vibrant colors of festival lights and laughter amidst the townsfolk. Yet, as she penned their narrative, her anxiety swirled. What if her children continued to see their family legacy as a burden? What if they never understood the strength that survived within them? As night cast its shadow over Maplewood, an unexpected confrontation erupted. "You don't get it, Mom," Jake shouted, his voice sharp against the stillness of their home. "No one cares about some old stories. We're living in the now, not dwelling on the past." In that moment, the rift widened. Ruth fought back tears, feeling the weight of her parents' suffering pressing down on her. "I'm trying to teach you, Jake. Their story means everything." The words hung heavy in the air, thick with unspoken pain. "Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. As the Harvest Festival bloomed in a riot of colors, laughter echoed through the streets, but Ruth knew her heart carried a weight unseen. Stories filled the air, each tale illuminating themes of adversity and hope. She stood waiting for her turn at the microphone, Jake by her side wrestling with his feelings. The crowd listened, some nodding, others whispering opinions both sympathetic and dismissive. Yet as she began to speak, words flowed like warm honey, pouring out the sacrifices and memories of her family. Ruth felt the shifted gaze as they began to understand the profound beauty of survival. In that moment, Jake started to feel a stirring within, a flicker of realization that challenged everything he thought he knew about success. But just as understanding began to blossom, a voice called out from the crowd, an accusation that threatened to undo everything, forcing Ruth and Jake to confront the painful truths they had avoided. What did it truly mean to be a hero? The air bristled with tension, leaving them both teetering on the edge of a revelation that could change their lives forever. Ruth's heart raced as she looked out at the crowd, searching for the source of the voice that had interrupted the moment. "You call that a hero's story?" a man shouted, a sneer curling his lip. Murmurs rippled through the audience, and Ruth could feel the weight of their eyes, the mix of curiosity and skepticism pressing on her like a heavy blanket. Jake stood frozen beside her, caught between the urge to support his mother and the whispered taunts of self-doubt, swirling in his mind. Who were these people? Did they understand the burden of a legacy shaped by survival? Did they care? "People lost everything," Ruth managed to say, her voice trembling but firm. My parents didn't just survive. They thrived. They showed me that love can endure even the darkest times. The words felt like life buoys thrown into a raging sea, but the crowd's reaction was mixed. Some nodded in acknowledgement. Others still scoffed, their doubt burning bright. Maybe it's all just a story, the man jeered, a fairy tale for the weak. Stop. Jake exploded, something raw and fierce flickering in his eyes. You have no idea what you're talking about. They weren't weak. They lived through hell and came out stronger. The silence that followed was thunderous. Ruth looked at her son, seeing the blaze of passion in him that she had rarely witnessed before. In that moment, he was no longer just the adolescent fighting against the limitations of their life, he was a young man standing for something meaningful. What does that even mean? The man challenged, the bravado stripped away by Jake's fierce defense. Telling old stories won't change anything. Maybe. Jake took a shaky breath, searching for words as he glanced at Ruth, who met his gaze with a mix of pride and fear. But it helps us understand. If I can see where I come from, if we can see that it's possible to overcome and build something beautiful from the ashes, maybe that's how we find our strength for now. Ruth felt the tension shift. She had fought so hard to show her children the power of their history, and now, here stood Jake brimming with emotion, asserting his beliefs. The crowd's posture shifted, heads turning to listen more intently. Could they be swayed? Could they feel the weight of what Ruth had always wanted to convey? I am proud of my family, Jake continued, confidence shining through his words. Being connected to that history, it's not a curse. It's a testament to resilience. Ruth's heart swelled, sensing a bridge forming between her son's world and hers. Perhaps this was the turning point she had longed for. Perhaps Jake was finally beginning to see what it meant to bear the legacy of his grandparents not as a burden, but as a source of strength. But then, before they could bask in the moment, another voice echoed out, slicing through the fragile peace like glass shattering. You think that makes you better than us? You think your pain gives you a license to judge? It was an older woman, her face hidden behind a collected facade, but her tone dripped with disdain. You're still living in their shadow. Ruth felt a chill run down her spine. The struggle wasn't over, it had only just begun. The questions loomed large. What path would they take? Would they find common ground amid the storm? And as the atmosphere thickened, Ruth whispered to herself, please let this be the moment we break free. The spotlight now was not just on her, it was on Jake, their family, and the town of Maplewood. Could they, together, redefine the narrative and inspire something monumental amidst the shadows of the past? But before they could answer that question, a little girl from the front of the crowd raised her hand, eyes wide with curiosity. What happened next? Ruth and Jake exchanged glances, the horizon of their journey stretching before them, immense and uncertain. What would they choose to share? What change would come next? Ruth took a step forward, her heart pounding. She could feel Jake's uncertainty radiating beside her. The little girl's innocent question hung in the air like a fragile balloon, filled with hope and curiosity. Ruth realized this wasn't just about her family anymore. It was about speaking for all those whose voices had been silenced. What happened next? The girl asked again, her eyes wide, as if she truly wanted to hear a story that could change everything. Ruth cleared her throat, lacing her fingers together to keep them steady. After everything they endured, my parents chose to live for each other and for their children. They found a way to rebuild their lives, brick by brick. The crowd shifted, some leaning in closer, wanting to catch every word. Jake interjected, they built a home, a community. They showed us that we don't have to be defined by our past, but shaped by it. His voice had grown steadier, gaining momentum like a train that couldn't be stopped. What did your parents do? Another voice piped up. It was a teenager, her interest peaked amid fading skepticism. They became storytellers, Ruth said, her voice softening, feeling the connection grow. They traveled from town to town, sharing not just their pain but their strength, their love. They taught us that storytelling isn't about living in the shadows, it's about illuminating the path for those who come after us. Even the older woman fell silent now, her expression wavering between anger and contemplation. Ruth could see cracks forming in her facade. And every story came with a lesson, Jake added, a lesson about hope, compassion, and the power of community. They wanted us to understand our history, not to pity us, but to empower us. He took a deep breath, searching the crowd for understanding. "Don't you see?" he asked, his voice rising again, fiery yet earnest. "Their story isn't just theirs, it's ours. It's about resilience in the face of immense challenges. It's about how love can ignite change." Murmurs began to ripple through the crowd again, but now they felt different, more hopeful, questioning. Ruth felt excitement boost her spirit. They were beginning to listen. "Can we share our stories too?" the little girl asked, tilting her head to the side, a frown scrunching her small face. "Can we tell them how we feel?" Ruth nodded fervently. "Yes. We can all share. Every voice matters." Another man from the back of the audience spoke, softer this time, as if admitting a truth. "But how do we heal? How do we start?" Jack glanced at Ruth, and she understood. They had to offer the space for connection. "Healing starts with understanding," she said, her heart swelling with hope. "We share the stories, the truths that hurt, but also the triumphs. Together, we can face the shadows, not shy away." A hand shot up from an older member of the audience, and with a hesitant quiver in his voice, he said, "My grandfather fought in the war and I never knew the full story. Can we really learn from each other?" Ruth's heart raced as she caught Jake's stare, gleaming with possibility. This was a true turning point. Stories were a path to connection, and as they took that step together, both the people of Maplewood and Ruth's family could begin to weave their own narratives of courage and resilience. But just as she opened her mouth to respond, the crowd shifted again, and a different voice called out, reverberating with anger. "You think sharing is enough?" Ruth held her breath, a new wave of tension crashing over them. Who was leading this charge against their transformation now? And how would they respond? As the crowd bristled, she knew they were on the verge of something monumental. How could they turn this moment into a movement? Ruth felt the weight of this challenge settle on her shoulders. An echo of her parents' strength flooded through her as she braced herself for what lay ahead. Would they find the courage to push through the doubts? The air crackled with tension and possibility. What would they choose next? Ruth took a deep breath, trying to steady herself as she scanned the crowd. Faces twisted with confusion, anger, and yearning stared back at her. The voice that had interrupted them was from a tall man in a worn-out jacket. His brow furrowed, eyes sharp, challenging. "What makes you think your story can heal us?" "We've suffered too," he spat, his voice carrying an edge. Silence fell heavily. A child's innocent question turned into this man's desperate refusal to believe that sharing could mend the chalkboard scarred by years of hurt. Ruth felt her heart thud against her ribs. How could she explain that healing was indeed in the stories they shared? Jake stepped forward slightly, sensing the shift in mood. "It's not about minimizing anyone's pain," he said, his voice calm yet firm. "It's about understanding that we're all part of this community. We have different experiences, but our feelings can unite us." "But what if they don't?" The man bit back, his fists clenched. "What if our stories just open old wounds?" Ruth felt an ache in her chest as she noticed the older woman who had previously been silent now nodding slowly. It was a moment of resonance. "Sometimes, we have to lean into that discomfort to heal," Ruth said gently, her hands still tethered together, but a new strength accompanied her words. "What if sharing our pain gives others the courage to release their own?" There was a ripple of murmurs, some now quiet, others leaning towards intrigue. "Look at us," Jake said, gesturing broadly. "We're here because we want more than to just exist in our pain. We want to live fully. We want to be understood. The tall man shifted slightly, his posture softening just a hair. Ruth seized the moment, knowing they were walking a tightrope, balancing between possibility and despair. Together, she continued, we can share and celebrate our differences. Each story has its own weight, but when we put them together, they create something powerful. The little girl from the front raised her tiny hand again, bursting with eagerness. I want to share my story. Ruth smiled at her, the warmth of her spirit igniting a hope she already believed in. Yes. Together, we can fill the room with all of our stories. Each voice matters. The man blinked, as if processing her words. Maybe, just maybe, there was a chance to find peace through stories. Let us hear yours, sweetheart, Jake said to the girl, taking a step back to allow her to approach the front. His encouragement seemed to have a calming effect on the crowd. As the little girl began to speak, her words were shy, tinged with the sweetness of childhood. She spoke of her puppy, her favorite park, and how she sometimes felt sad when she missed her friends. Ruth watched as the crowd began to soften. Some faces broke into smiles as they remembered their own joys. A flicker of connection sparked. In that moment, the tall man hesitated, visibly torn. Something shifted in his eyes. Was it hope? Doubt? But just as he opened his mouth, a new figure approached from the fringe of the crowd, a woman clutching a newspaper clippings tightly. Her gaze locked onto Ruth, filled with an intensity that sent shivers down her spine. I have something to say, she called out, her voice steady but fierce, about a truth that needs to be told. Ruth's heart raced, wondering what this new revelation could bring. Would it deepen their collective journey or tear them apart? The crowd shifted as curiosity and apprehension coursed through them. Could this be the moment that quilted their collective experience into a tapestry of transformation? The woman's voice sliced through the tension like a knife. Ruth felt a surge of energy in the air. The crowd's faces turned toward her, curiosity mingled with something heavier, anticipation or perhaps fear of what was to come. Drawing closer, the woman's grip on the newspaper softened as she let out a shaky breath. I found this article recently. It talks about survivors, people like us, who faced unimaginable horrors and yet found a way to rebuild their lives. There was a pause, her eyes darting to the tall man, then back to Ruth. It reminded me that we all carry scars. But those scars are part of our stories. Ruth felt a stirring within her. This was it, this was the moment she had been hoping for, a chance for collective understanding. She stepped forward, encouraging the woman with a nod. Let us hear it. Please. The woman unfolded the newspaper, her fingers trembling slightly as she scanned the words. There was a woman she lost everything at Auschwitz. Her family, her home. But she survived. Instead of letting grief consume her, she decided to tell her story, to help others understand the depths of pain and the light of hope. A murmur swept through the crowd. Faces shifted, troubled by the weight of the past yet intrigued by the possibility of healing. Ruth's heart raced as she absorbed the connection they could forge through shared narratives. The tall man stepped forward, his expression softening. And her truth, it's still relevant, isn't it? Our pain can open doors, not just wounds. His voice was unsteady, yet a hint of surrender colored his words. Yes. The older woman from before piped up, her eyes glimmering with unshed tears. It could help us. Just imagine if we all shared not only our struggles but also our triumphs, our moments of joy. That could be the light we need to find our way out of the darkness. Ruth looked at the eager faces around her, the little girl still bright-eyed, ready to hear more. This is what we can do, she said, her voice rich with emotion. There's power in vulnerability. We can weave our stories like a tapestry. We're stronger together. The woman holding the article pressed forward, her determination building. Her story didn't end with despair. It became a message of resilience. She touched lives, inspired change. This is us, standing here today. We have the power to inspire, to empower one another through our truth. The crowd stirred, infectious energy surging through them. Hope crackled in the air, rising higher than the heaviness of their past. Ruth glanced at the tall man, who now gazed with blossoming understanding. Are we ready to share? Are we ready to heal? She asked softly, looking at each face in the crowd. A gentle nod came from the older woman, and slowly, the little girl raised her hand again. Can I go again? The innocence of her voice melted hearts, creating a safe space for all. As they turned back to the little girl, anticipation buzzed in the air, but Ruth felt a deeper tension stirring below the surface. What if their stories brought more pain than relief? Let us hear what you have to say, sweetheart, Jake prompted, urging the child forward, unaware of the silent battle waging within Ruth. But as the little girl began to speak once more, Ruth couldn't shake off a lingering question that bubbled within her. What hidden truths lay waiting in their shared pasts, just waiting for someone to uncover them? As she listened to the child's gentle words, Ruth felt an undeniable signal within her, an inkling that the real story was just beginning to unfold, and they were right at the edge of a new revelation. The little girl took a deep breath, her eyes sparkling with a mix of innocence and determination. My grandma told me stories about her mom, she began, her voice steady despite the weight of her words. She came from far away. She said she was really scared at first, but she was brave. She knew that being brave meant sharing what happened to her. So, she painted pictures. She painted a big sun because she wanted everyone to remember that even after dark times, the sun still shines. Ruth felt her heart swell. The child's perspective was so pure, so untouched by anger or bitterness. It tugged at something deep inside her, igniting a flicker of hope. The tall man shifted slightly, leaning forward, eyes fixed on the girl as if her words were his lifeline. The crowd tightened around her, hanging on every syllable. She said, if we don't tell our story, then it's like we're stuck in the dark, the girl continued, her voice gaining strength with each phrase. And I think we should tell our stories together. So no one feels alone. A ripple of movement coursed through the group, as if the girl's words were the beginning of something monumental. Several members of the audience exchanged glances, their expressions stirring with a shared understanding. The mom next to the girl squeezed her daughter's hand tightly, tears now glistening in her eyes. Wow, Ruth whispered, her heart racing. The weight of the moment pressed down on her, but it was lighter now, filled with possibility. You're so brave. Thank you for sharing that. Bringing light into the darkness is one of the most powerful things we can do. The crowd erupted in a soft murmur of agreement. Ruth watched as faces softened, the heaviness of their pasts momentarily lifted. That moment sparked a flame of courage in some of the older members too. She could see the wheels turning in their heads, wounds were starting to surface, ready to be spoken. Then, Ruth felt a hand on her shoulder. It was the older woman, her eyes wide. I think I want to share my story, too, she said, voice trembling but resolute. I kept it locked up inside for so long. It's time to let it out. More heads turned towards her, the room growing warmer with the renewed spirit of shared vulnerability. Ruth's spirit soared as she encouraged the woman with a nod, feeling the atmosphere transform. Vulnerability was blossoming all around them. Let us create a space for stories, for healing, Ruth proclaimed. We can be each other's strength. Whatever scars we carry, they can help us connect in ways we never imagined. The woman nodded, taking a deep breath as she prepared to speak. When I was a child, during the war, my family hid. We were scared every day. But we sang songs together. Those songs were our light. Ruth felt the electricity in the air again, the same buzz that had ignited before. Each story would be a thread connecting them closer, weaving their hearts tighter together. She sensed this was more than just words, it was empowerment. As she listened, her gaze wandered to each face in the crowd, absorbing the change unfolding right in front of her. Yet, a flicker of doubt gnawed at the edges of her mind. Would sharing these stories unleash the pain even more? Or could it truly foster healing? The floor was now alive with voices. Laughter and tears intermingled in a symphony of expression that filled the space. But despite the collective catharsis blooming around her, Ruth's heart raced with trepidation. She felt the pull of something hidden, a deeper truth beneath the surface of their shared histories. What were they on the brink of discovering? As shadows of the past danced on the walls, she closed her eyes just for a moment, breathed deep, and readied herself for whatever revelations were yet to come. What would they unearth together in this newfound strength? And would the bonds forged today be enough to hold them through the revelations yet to come? The room buzzed with energy. Stories flowed like a river, each one brimming with raw emotion. The woman who had first spoken shared her memories of stolen moments in the darkness, the whispers of lullabies mingling with echoes of fear. Others leaned in closer, captivated by the weight of her words. A younger man stood next, his hands trembling slightly, but he stepped into the light. I never thought I could talk about this, he started, glancing around at the expectant faces. Growing up, my father never spoke about the war. We'd sit in silence, the radio playing soft music, while I could feel the unspoken memories hanging in the air. His voice cracked, a tear tracing a path down his cheek. But I knew he carried something heavy in his heart. I want to share. I want him to be remembered. The crowd listened in rapt attention as he painted a picture of how his father found solace in tending a small garden, the flowers growing from soil enriched with tears. There was beauty in the pain, and the connection between the generations sparked a profound sense of understanding among them. Ruth felt tears prick her own eyes. Each story, like pages in an old book, added layers to their shared history. Yet, amidst the warmth and openness, she sensed deeper turmoil lingering beneath the surface. What lay hidden that could shatter this catharsis? As more stories wove through the air, the little girl squeezed her mother's hand, a gentle reminder of innocence amidst the heaviness of reality. I want to tell a story too. She chimed, her voice sweet and clear. About the big sun. If my great-great-grandma was scared and still painted, then I can be brave like her. Ruth found herself smiling at the girl. Her words cut through layers of adult fears, offering a refreshing perspective. The pure courage of a child was transformative. It reminded the group that even in the darkest times, hope could flourish like the brightest of suns. The older woman stood again, her voice filled with determination. We need to carry these memories forward, she said. Not just for us, but for those who come after. We must speak our truth, even if it hurts. Ruth felt something shift, as if the room was a vessel, beginning to hold not just stories of sorrow but also seeds of healing. The stories were like knots, weaving people together in a beautiful tapestry of shared experience. Yet, amidst the gathering warmth, an unsettling question lingered. Were they truly prepared for the weight of their own histories? Could they handle the truth behind every shadow they dared to illuminate? The room seemed to inhale, a collective suspense hanging in the air, and for a brief moment, everything slowed. Ruth's heart thudded in her chest as she realized this wasn't just a moment of storytelling, it was a profound journey into the unknown. She could feel the anticipation building like a storm. The little girl looked up, her eyes shining. Can anyone tell a story about how they got brave? A ripple of nervous laughter broke the tension, but Ruth knew they were on the brink of something much deeper. How would they share the story of their bravery? Would they all embrace the truth? As Ruth prepared to speak again, the weight of their shared past and the promise of their future filled the room with electric potential. What revelations lay in wait as the stories continued to unfold? Who among them would share the truth that might change everything? Ruth took a breath, feeling the air thick with emotion. There was a tremor in her hands as she clasped them together, her heart urging her to open up. The little girl's question floated in her mind, circling like a hawk ready to swoop down. She thought about bravery and what it meant, especially in a room filled with people ready to share their deepest fears. I want to share something too, she said, her voice steadying with each word. "It's about my grandmother. She lived through things I can barely wrap my head around." The room quieted, all eyes turning toward her. The vulnerability in Ruth's gaze mirrored reflections from each face present, a gallery of shared sorrow and resilience. "She was just a teenager when the war began," Ruth continued. "Her family was taken from their home. One night, men showed up. They took everything. The only thing she had left was her younger brother. She had to sneak him away, to protect him. But in doing so, she had to let go of everything she knew." Ruth felt the weight of the words, the grief woven into the fabric of her voice. "Can you imagine being that scared? Having to run, to be so brave, to choose between your own safety and the life of someone you love?" She did that. In the face of fear, she cared for him like a shield, nurturing his hope while concealing her own tears. Around the room, emotions flickered like candle flames: surprise, sorrow, and admiration all blending together. She watched as the older woman nodded in recognition. "And do you know?" Ruth continued, emboldened by the connection, "she found a way to stay strong. They found refuge in a hidden place, and she taught him to live in the moment. They shared stories, dreams about the future, and laughter that echoed through their little hiding spot." Ruth paused, the weight of her grandmother's legacy settling over her. Those moments, tiny yet powerful, helped them survive. And somehow, after everything, they emerged. They rebuilt their lives, filled with light. It was their laughter that turned the echo of fear into harmony. Tears rolled down her cheeks. The room held its breath, the gravity of revelation reverberating in silent understanding. Bravery isn't just about acts of heroism. Sometimes it's simply choosing hope, despite the darkest of shadows, she whispered, letting the last words hang heavily in the air. The little girl blinked back her own tears. "I want to be brave like her too," she exclaimed, sparking a wave of warmth in the room. A ripple of nods and murmurs of agreement washed over them, affirming the shared desire to embrace courage. Suddenly, an older gentleman shifted in his seat. Ruth could see he was wrestling with something deep within. She held her breath, wondering if he would stand. Would he join them in this circle of truth? Then he spoke, his voice deep and filled with emotion. "I want to share my story too, and it's one about my own bravery in an unexpected way." The room stirred, hearts leaning in closer. Ruth felt a rush of adrenaline as she realized they were stepping into uncharted territory. What would this new story unveil? What new threads would be woven into their tapestry? The older gentleman cleared his throat, the sound heavy with years of unspoken burdens. With a slow, deliberate motion, he stood, the weight of his frame indicating a history that had shaped him in immeasurable ways. The room went silent, breaths held tight in anticipation. "My name is Harold," he started, his voice breaking slightly as if the memories themselves were scraping against his throat. "And I want to talk about the bravery of telling the truth. It's not always an obvious kind of courage, but I learned it can be just as powerful." He took a moment to steady himself, his eyes scanning the faces around him. The faces that reflected an energy of shared connection and mutual support, urging him to go on. "I grew up in a world that felt so different from the one we live in today. I was a boy during the war, lost in the midst of it all. My parents warned me to stay quiet to please the silence of those who wanted to ignore what was happening. But deep down, I felt something awful brewing, something I couldn't ignore." Harold's voice trembled. "One day, I heard a commotion outside. A family was being taken just like that." He snapped his fingers to emphasize the abruptness. "I can still hear the cries, see the fear written all over their faces. I was horrified but paralyzed. I wanted to scream, to run out and help. But instead, I just stood there." The walls of the room felt tighter, the air thick with palpable regret. Ruth could see it etched upon Harold's furrowed brow, memories still sharp even after so many years. "But that's not where the story ends," he said, his tone picking up a flicker of resilience. "Months later, I saw what happened when you stay quiet long enough. A neighbor, a kind old man who often helped our family, was arrested. It was then that I decided enough was enough. I knew I had to speak out. I couldn't let fear hold me anymore. I went to the underground group in our town and, with shaky hands, told them what I had seen. It was terrifying. His gaze shifted to the floor for a brief moment, remembrance painting his features with a shadow. But it was also liberating. I understood then that truth has wings, it can't always pause for the world around it to be ready. Harold looked up, locking eyes with Ruth. The weight of his story connected them in a way that felt both personal and universal. That little act of bravery, speaking up, helped others find their courage too. My words helped save lives, even when I didn't understand how powerful they could be. A murmur of admiration swept through the room, soft gasps of empathy punctuating the silence. Each listener grappled with their own definitions of bravery, the unyielding resolve to break the silence, the quiet strength to share vulnerability. I wish I had told my story sooner. I wish I hadn't let fear dictate my choices or my voice. But I learned that it's never too late to be brave, he concluded, his spirit illuminating the somber atmosphere. Applause erupted gently, the room reverberating with the energy of newfound hope and inspiration. Ruth caught sight of the little girl, her smile blooming wider, reflecting Harold's message powerfully, but as Harold sat down, Ruth felt a stir in her own heart. There was a sudden need to dive deeper, to explore what had brought people together in their bravery. She leaned forward, eyes sparkling with an idea. And what if we explore the other stories? What if we find the little acts of bravery still waiting to be shared? What if we discover hidden truths in our own lives, just like Harold did? The room filled with buzzing energy, eager to uncover more. Let us make this circle a moment of transformation, Ruth urged, sensing the shift. Who else wants to tell their story? Let us break the silence together. The air thickened again with anticipation. Who would step forward next? What hidden courage would emerge? The crowd shifted restlessly, anticipation swirling like leaves in the autumn breeze. Ruth's heart raced as she sensed they were on the edge of something monumental, a chance for true healing, for bonding, for understanding. She glanced around at the familiar faces of Maplewood, each of them holding their own stories and struggles. A gentle hand from the back of the crowd raised high. It was the older woman from earlier, her resolve now bright in her eyes. "I'd like to share," she said, her voice steady, filled with emotion. "My name is Edith. I've held on to my pain for too long. Time to let it out." The room quieted, all eyes on her. Ruth felt a wave of support washing over Edith, an unspoken promise that they all stood with her. Edith took a breath, her hands trembling as she clasped them tightly. "I didn't grow up in this town. I came here after the war, searching for something to hold on to, something to make sense of it all. In my mind, I should have stayed hidden, but I discovered that silence only added to the suffering." Her voice cracked slightly as she continued. "When I was a child, like many, I was taught to dismiss my fears. We hid, we ran, we learned to survive, but we didn't learn to heal. We kept our heads down. But I realized that silence doesn't heal wounds, it festers them." Ruth felt sadness wash over her. Yet she felt admiration too, as Edith opened up. This was the bravery they'd been seeking, the courage to lay bare one's soul. "After the war, I began painting," Edith shared, her eyes lighting up with memory. "Each stroke let the colors of my pain spill onto the canvas. I painted our stories, dark hues of despair intertwined with bright splashes of hope." Ruth could see it, the color and light capturing the essence of their shared experience. "Art became my voice when words felt too heavy," she added, her expression softening. The room buzzed again with understanding, what an incredible realization that their expressions of pain could transform into something beautiful. They were showing each other the strength rooted in vulnerability. "I learned that it's okay to embrace sorrow and transform it into beauty. One painting may not change the world, but it can change the way we see each other. It can inspire conversations, uncover hidden stories, ignite connections. Applause erupted gently, the sound echoing with affirmation. Ruth felt gratitude swell within her. Here was a shared journey toward healing transforming into something more, collective strength blooming in real time. Jake caught Ruth's gaze, his eyes bright with admiration for Edith's courage. This was the moment he had begun to envision, a chance to build bridges across the divides of misunderstanding. Sharing our stories is what gives them weight, Ruth said, emboldened by Edith's honesty. Each expression lays down the foundation for our healing together, it connects us through our shared humanity. Edith smiled warmly, her heart opening further. Let this be a reminder that our stories don't just belong to us, they invite others to step forward, to be heard. Suddenly, the little girl's hand shot up again, eyes shining bright. Can I tell another story? Ruth's heart soared. Of course, sweetheart. We'd love to hear your story. With wide eyes, the little girl approached the microphone, her small frame radiating confidence. Just like my grandma, I can make sunshine. She declared. I want to tell you about the time I was scared to try something new. My coach said to just play, even if I was scared. So, I did it. The crowd leaned in closer, enraptured. I scored a goal, she beamed, and it made everyone happy. Laughter rippled through the crowd, lightening the atmosphere. So like my grandma, I learned that even if you're scared, you can shine. Ruth felt the warmth of connection bloom all around them, a thread weaving itself through generations. The little girl's bravery allowed others to feel safe to step into their own. As more people began to share, voices intertwined like music, crescendoing in a symphony of connection. Each story held pieces of sorrow, resiliency, joy, and love, each a piece of their tapestry. Ruth stepped back for a moment, letting the energy wash over her. This was more than just the sum of their experiences. They were generating a transformative wave that reshaped how they viewed pain and healing, and though they were all carrying their burdens, in this very room, they were also lighting the path toward freedom, a collective courage breaking down barriers, forging new identities bound by shared experiences. What if, Ruth said, an idea blossoming anew, we continue this together? A storytelling circle. Let us meet and talk, encouraging each other to share our truths. Nods of agreement filled the room, enthusiasm swelling as hope sparkled in their eyes. She could see it, a flourishing community rooted deeply in empathy, a village where all voices mattered. As they embraced this commitment, Ruth felt her heart swell with a warmth that chased away the shadows. Their stories would continue on, transforming lives beyond themselves. It was their moment, a future brimming with promise lay ahead of them. Ruth looked at Jake, pride coursing through her as she saw the understanding sparkling in his gaze. They had arrived at a transformative juncture, their past finally guiding them toward strength and understanding. Standing together in the light and love of this incredible moment, she whispered to herself, this is the beginning. And so, they would walk forward, hand in hand, their stories unfurling like a bright new dawn, each one shedding light upon the path ahead. Now, this isn't just a story, it's a movement. You need to subscribe now to catch every transformative tale in the future. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, your support is crucial. Comment your reactions, let us hear how this resonates with you. And please, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who truly need to witness this amazing journey. Don't wait not even one more second to share. Showing your love is what keeps this community alive.